Madeline Bennett, an acclaimed businesswoman at the heart of New York City, hurried through the bustling streets of the city that never sleeps. With the cold morning wind cutting across her face, she navigated the crowded sidewalks with the urgency of someone on the verge of making a decision that could redefine the course of her career. Her heels echoed on the pavement, each step a beat on the clock that seemed to be ticking faster than she could keep up with. The meeting with her partners, scheduled weeks ago, was crucial. At that moment, the future of the company was at stake, and her mind buzzed with strategies, scenarios, and possible outcomes. Madeline allowed no distractions. Her focus was fixed on the goal ahead, ignoring the chaos around her. But fate, in its unpredictability, had other plans. As Madeline turned the corner of a narrow street, a boy appeared out of nowhere, positioning himself right in front of her, blocking her path. He was small, dressed in worn clothes that seemed to have endured many winters, and his shoes, clearly too tight, showed signs of a long journey. His hair was disheveled, and his hands were slightly dirty, but there was something in his eyes, a glimmer of determination, as if he had a mission far greater than his age suggested. Madeline felt a flash of irritation. This interruption could not have come at a worse time. She tried to step aside, hurrying, but the boy moved with surprising agility, blocking her path once more. He raised his hand, not in an aggressive gesture, but as if he wanted to say something important, something that couldn't wait. "Not now, kid," Madeline said impatiently, already preparing to give him some change so he would get out of the way. After all, she was convinced that the boy just wanted money, like so many others she had encountered on the streets. But then, he spoke. And his words, unexpected and laden with a strange seriousness, cut through the cold air like a blade. "You shouldn't go to that meeting." His voice, firm and resolute, didn't match his fragile appearance, and it caught Madeline completely off guard. She stopped suddenly, her thoughts about the meeting momentarily dissipating. The boy looked at her with an expression that seemed to know more than he should, as if he was aware of something she didn't know. For a moment, Madeline stood there, unsure of what to think, her heart racing for a reason different from her lateness. There was something in the way he spoke, something that made her hesitate, a feeling she couldn't quite identify. But the urgency of the appointment soon took control of her mind again. "I don't have time for games," she said, trying to shake off the discomfort as she turned her back on the boy and resumed her way. However, as she walked away, his words echoed in her mind, reverberating like a silent warning that she couldn't ignore. During the meeting, Madeline struggled to keep her focus on the discussions unfolding around her, but her thoughts were elsewhere. The boy's words continued to echo in her mind, repeating incessantly like a disturbing refrain. Every time she tried to concentrate on the charts and proposals projected on the screen in front of her, his face would emerge in her memory, with that serious expression and enigmatic warning. The conference room, usually a place where Madeline felt in control, now seemed suffocating, almost claustrophobic. Her colleagues spoke of strategies, goals, and figures, but Madeline could only think about the unspoken message she had received on the streets. She felt a growing unease, an unsettling sense that something was off, even though she couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. Her eyes wandered over the faces of her partners, searching for some sign that they, too, felt the same, but nothing seemed different, except for the restlessness that consumed her. Then, in the middle of an important presentation, a faint buzz brought Madeline back to reality. Her phone, silently resting on the table, vibrated with a new notification. Discreetly, she picked it up and looked at the screen. A message from an unknown number appeared, simple, direct, but laden with a frightening weight. "I warned you. Don't go to that meeting." A chill ran down Madeline's spine instantly, as if she had been plunged into ice. What did it mean? How did that boy know where she would be, and, even more disturbingly, how had he gotten her number? Questions piled up in her mind, each more troubling than the last. Her hands began to tremble slightly as she tried to maintain her composure. Feeling that she couldn't stay there without getting to the bottom of it, she asked for a break, her voice slightly shaky despite her effort to sound calm. In the hallway, away from the other's eyes, Madeline took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. With anxious fingers, she dialed the unknown number, but the call didn't go through. The phone on the other end was turned off. The sound of the call disconnecting echoed in her mind like a signal of something deeper, a warning that shouldn't be ignored. Reluctantly, but with no other option, she returned to the meeting room. However, As soon as she entered, she noticed something strange. The atmosphere had changed. The looks on her partner's faces were different, carrying a silent tension. There was a heaviness in the air, a sense that something was profoundly wrong, but no one said anything. They only exchanged brief, almost conspiratorial glances, as if sharing a secret that Madeline didn't know. The discomfort she had felt before intensified, transforming into a troubling certainty that, somehow, this meeting was about to take a turn she couldn't predict. In the days that followed, Madeline couldn't get the boy out of her thoughts. The memory of his determined gaze and enigmatic words haunted her nights and disturbed her mornings. She felt a growing unease, as if she were on the verge of uncovering a secret that would change everything around her. Determined not to let it go, she returned to the place where she had met him, intent on finding him again. The streets were as busy as before, but despite her thorough search, the boy seemed to have vanished without a trace. Every corner, every alley, was revisited, but he was nowhere to be found. Frustration began to take hold of her, mixed with a sense of urgency she couldn't explain. As the days passed, Madeline began to notice that strange things were happening around her, as if the universe was trying to send her subtle signs that something was wrong. Her partners, once trustworthy and transparent, started acting strangely, with whispered conversations and glances that seemed to avoid her. There was a tension in the air, a feeling that something was being kept from her. Moreover, her bank accounts, always under strict control, began to show transactions she didn't recognize. Transfers and withdrawals she hadn't authorized appeared on the statements, leaving her confused and worried. Madeline also noticed that important documents started disappearing mysteriously. Papers that were once organized in specific folders were now out of place, and some had vanished completely. Among them were contracts and agreements vital to the company, including documents that contained sensitive clauses that, if misinterpreted or manipulated, could compromise her position in the company. The pattern was clear: someone was trying to sabotage her. It was on a quiet night, while working alone in her office, that Madeline finally found a concrete clue. She was exhausted, with the desk lamp casting long shadows in the room. As she reviewed some papers, she noticed something strange. One of the missing documents, which she believed to be lost forever, appeared amidst a pile of seemingly harmless papers. It was a contract, and within it, a specific clause caught her attention. It was a recent addition, something she didn't remember approving. As she read it carefully, Madeline realized that this clause, if activated, could put her in an extremely vulnerable position within the company. Someone had carefully orchestrated everything, trying to undermine her leadership and perhaps even destroy her career. The discovery made her heart race, adrenaline pulsing through her veins as the truth slowly began to reveal itself before her eyes. One morning, the sun shone timidly through the clouds, casting a soft light over the streets of New York. Madeline was sitting at a small table in the cafe across from her office, savoring her morning coffee while trying to shake off the constant feeling that something was wrong. She was absorbed in her thoughts, the strong aroma of the coffee providing momentary comfort. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared before her, making her heart skip a beat. "I warned you not to go to that meeting," said the boy, his voice calm but laden with a certainty that didn't match his age. Madeline looked at him, surprised and yet relieved. There he was, the boy she couldn't get out of her mind. He seemed so out of place in the elegant cafe, his simple clothes contrasting with the sophisticated surroundings. Still, there was something about him that made her feel he was, somehow, important. "Sit down," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her, not taking her eyes off him. "Who are you? And how do you know so much about my life?" The boy hesitated for a moment before pulling out the chair and sitting down. His eyes, large and expressive, locked onto hers. "My name is Ethan," he began, his voice calm but filled with a wisdom that seemed unusual for someone so young. "I've lived on the streets for as long as I can remember. I've never had a real home, or a family to take care of me." Madeline felt a pang of compassion upon hearing this, but she remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "But I have a gift," he said, as if choosing his words carefully. "I can sense when something bad is about to happen. I don't know exactly how it works, it's like a very strong intuition. When I saw you running that day, I knew something terrible was going to happen." Madeline frowned, intrigued. "And how did you know I was going to that meeting? And why did you care?" Ethan shrugged, his eyes fixed on the table. I didn't know it was a specific meeting. I just felt that if you kept going, something bad would happen. I can't explain it better than that. I just knew. And I cared because it felt like the right thing to do. Madeline leaned forward, her eyes assessing the boy in front of her. The sincerity in his voice was palpable, but everything still felt like a puzzle to her. And what about the message? How did you get my number? Ethan looked at her with a serious expression. That, I don't know. I just did what I felt needed to be done. He seemed so calm, so sure of his words, that Madeline found herself unable to doubt him. Silence settled between them, filled with unasked questions and answers that might never come. Madeline knew she was dealing with something beyond her understanding, something that could change everything she believed in. Determined to unravel the mystery surrounding her life, Madeline made a bold decision: she would work alongside Ethan. Despite the unusual circumstances, she felt that the boy, with his strange ability to sense danger, was her best chance of discovering the truth. And so, an unlikely partnership was formed between the successful businesswoman and the street boy. "We need to start with my partners," Madeline said one night as she and Ethan examined documents in the quiet office. "Something isn't right, and I'm sure they're involved." Ethan nodded, his eyes focused on the papers spread across the table. "They're playing dirty, Madeline. I can feel it. There's more going on than we can see right now." In the days that followed, the two began to investigate every detail of her partner's activities. They combed through contracts, analyzed emails, and meticulously studied the suspicious bank transactions that had been appearing in Madeline's accounts. With each new discovery, the puzzle became clearer: her partners were plotting something big, something that could destroy not just her career but her reputation. "They're planning to accuse you of embezzlement," Ethan said in a low voice as he flipped through yet another document. "They're using these unauthorized transfers to frame you." Madeline felt a knot form in her stomach. Embezzlement? That could completely ruin me. I'd lose everything, not just the company. "They know that," Ethan replied, with a seriousness that tugged at Madeline's heart. "But we're going to stop it from happening. We need to be careful, avoid the traps they're setting in your path." With Ethan by her side, Madeline began to navigate the traps laid for her. He always seemed to know when something was about to go wrong, warning her just in time to avoid imminent disasters. Once, as she was about to sign a document that her partners had prepared, Ethan stopped her. "Don't sign that. I feel like something's wrong here." Madeline hesitated for a moment but trusted Ethan's instinct. Later, upon reviewing the document more carefully, she discovered a hidden clause that would have allowed her partners to siphon off even more funds in her name. Ethan was right. Again. But as they delved deeper into their investigation, Madeline and Ethan realized that the conspiracy was far more extensive than they had imagined. It wasn't just her partners who were involved; there were people in high positions within the company, and perhaps even outside of it, who were part of the scheme. Every time they thought they were close to exposing the culprits, it seemed someone anticipated their moves, always one step ahead, skillfully manipulating the pieces on the board. "They have a lot of power, Madeline," Ethan said as they analyzed the information they had gathered. "We're not just dealing with your partners. There are more people involved, powerful people." Madeline looked at the boy, seeing in him not just an ally, but someone she trusted more than she ever thought possible. "We need to be smarter, Ethan. If we want to win this game, we have to play better than they do." One night, the silence in Madeline's house was unsettling, interrupted only by the faint rustling of leaves outside. She sat at her desk, her tired eyes focused on yet another pile of seemingly endless documents. The soft light of a lamp illuminated the room, casting long shadows on the walls as she tried to untangle the web of fraud that threatened her life. The tension accumulated over the past few days seemed to weigh heavily on her shoulders, but she was determined to keep going. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the silence. The front door was violently forced open, the sound echoing through the house and making Madeline's heart race. Before she could react, masked men stormed into her home, moving swiftly like predators on the hunt. Fear froze her thoughts for a moment, but she quickly forced herself to act. She tried to hide, her hurried footsteps echoing through the house as she searched for a safe place. She slipped into a closet in the hallway, trying to control her ragged breathing. The sound of heavy boots on the floor grew closer, each step pounding on her nerves. Her entire body trembled, fear mixed with adrenaline coursing through her veins. Suddenly, the closet door was violently flung open, and a firm hand grabbed her, pulling her out of her hiding place. "You should have stayed quiet, Madeline," a rough voice laced with menace murmured close to her face. "Now, it's too late." The look Madeline gave the man was one of pure terror. She was surrounded, with no way out, at the mercy of those who wanted to silence her forever. The minutes that followed seemed to drag on, each second heavy with the uncertainty of what would come next. The sound of her own breathing was the only thing she could hear clearly, drowning out even the voices of the men as they argued about what to do next. Suddenly, the room was overtaken by unexpected commotion. Red and blue lights began flashing through the windows, and the shrill sound of sirens filled the air. The front door was forced open again, this time by law enforcement. The police swarmed the house, and within seconds, the masked men realized they were outnumbered and began fleeing in all directions, leaving Madeline behind. She collapsed to the floor, her body trembling, as the officers secured the area, ensuring she was out of danger. The adrenaline still surged through her, but now mixed with an almost overwhelming sense of relief. As the situation finally calmed, Madeline tried to comprehend what had just happened. It was then that she noticed a small figure standing at a distance, at the edge of the sidewalk, watching everything. Ethan, with a serious expression, slowly approached. "I knew they were following you," he said, with a calmness that didn't match the gravity of what had just occurred. "I was watching your house. When I saw those men, I knew you were in danger and called the police." Madeline looked at him, incredulous, the words failing to come out. She knew the situation was dire, but she hadn't imagined things would escalate to this point. The boy had once again proven to be her silent protector, always one step ahead, saving her from imminent danger. Madeline was determined to put an end to the conspiracy. With each passing day, the feeling of being surrounded by enemies intensified, and she knew she could no longer delay uncovering the truth. She hired a private investigator, someone with an impeccable reputation for digging up dark secrets and exposing the dirt that others tried to hide. Together, they began to delve into the past and present of her partners, searching for any clues that could clarify what was happening. After weeks of investigation, the detective finally brought Madeline a revelation that took her breath away. "One of your partners, William," he began, with a grave expression, "has a personal motive for wanting to destroy you." Madeline stared at him, feeling a chill run down her spine. "What did you find out?" The detective sighed, pulling out a folder filled with newspaper clippings and detailed notes. "Many years ago, you were responsible for a company merger. It was a brilliant move from a business perspective, but it left many people unemployed. Among them was William's father. He lost everything, and their family never recovered. Shortly after, William's father committed suicide." Madeline felt the ground give way beneath her feet. I didn't know," she murmured, the weight of guilt beginning to crush her. "I never knew my decisions caused so much suffering." "William blames you for his father's death," the detective continued. "He never got over the loss and the financial ruin of his family. Since then, he's been planning revenge, waiting for the right moment to bring you down." Madeline remained silent, trying to process what she had just heard. The pieces began to fall into place, and she finally understood why William seemed so determined to see her ruined. "He's doing this for revenge," she whispered. "For something I didn't even know I had done." As Madeline grappled with this harsh truth, Ethan also found himself in an emotional whirlwind. He had always believed he had no family, that he had been abandoned as a child and forced to survive on the streets. But now, long-buried memories began to resurface, fragments of a past he could barely remember. "Madeline," he said one afternoon, as he gazed at a framed photo in her living room, "I think I've seen this picture before." Madeline approached, curious. "What do you mean, Ethan?" He pointed to the image. It was an old photo of a corporate party, where Madeline was surrounded by executives and family members. "That woman," he said, lightly touching the glass of the frame, "I think I've seen her before, but I don't know where. There's something familiar about her." Madeline looked closely at the photo, trying to identify the woman who had triggered Ethan's memories. She was one of the wives of the company's partners. "Why do you think you know her?" Ethan shook his head, confused. "I don't know, but I feel like there's something important I'm forgetting. Like this picture is the key to understanding my own past." Madeline remained silent for a moment, pondering what this could mean. Ethan, maybe there's more to your past than you realize. We need to investigate this too. Maybe the answers you're looking for are closer than you think. Madeline couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper in Ethan's story, something still hidden in the shadows of the past. With renewed determination, she decided to dig further. She spent days combing through old files, forgotten documents, and corporate records she barely remembered existed. With each new discovery, her intuition told her she was getting closer to a truth that would change everything. One night, as she flipped through an old file containing records of the company's partners, something caught her attention. It was a yellowed photograph, showing a group of smiling executives. Among them was a man with a familiar face that Madeline couldn't get out of her head. The man had the same piercing eyes and striking features as Ethan. The resemblance was undeniable. Wasting no time, Madeline took the photo to the private investigator. "I need you to find out everything you can about this man," she said, pointing to the face in the picture. "He was an early partner in the company, but I don't remember ever hearing about him." Days later, the detective returned with surprising information. "Madeline, the man in the photo is named Robert Walker," he began, with a serious expression. "He was one of the company's first partners, but he mysteriously disappeared many years ago. No one knows for sure what happened to him." "Disappeared?" Madeline repeated, trying to process the information. "Ethan has the same last name," she murmured, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Exactly," the detective confirmed. "And the more I investigated, the more the similarities between Ethan and Robert became evident. There's no doubt that Ethan is Robert Walker's son." Madeline was shocked by the revelation. "This explains so much," she whispered, her thoughts racing. "It explains why Ethan has this sharp intuition, this almost supernatural ability to sense when something is wrong." "And that's not all," the detective continued. "Robert Walker wasn't just an excellent businessman, he also had a reputation for being almost visionary. People said he had a special talent for predicting what would happen in business, something many thought was just luck, but now it seems it was much more than that." Madeline leaned back in her chair, trying to piece together the puzzle in her mind. "So, Ethan didn't just inherit his father's business acumen," she said thoughtfully. "He also inherited this intuition, this ability to sense danger before it happens." "Exactly," the detective affirmed. "And that means Ethan might be the key to solving the entire mystery surrounding you. He didn't come into your life by chance." Madeline felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. Ethan's presence in her life, which once seemed like a strange coincidence, now took on a new dimension. "Ethan might be the missing piece to solve everything," she said, more to herself than to the detective. "But it also means he's in as much danger as I am." The detective nodded, agreeing with the gravity of the situation. "We need to be careful, Madeline. If anyone finds out who Ethan really is, things could become even more dangerous." With the clues finally coming together, Madeline and Ethan decided it was time to confront William. The air was thick with tension as they entered the conference room where William, the partner they knew was behind the schemes to destroy her, awaited them. He sat at the head of the table, appearing calm, but there was a glimmer of worry in his eyes. He didn't know what they had uncovered. Madeline began to speak, her voice steady but filled with restrained emotion. "We know what you did, William. We know about your plan to frame me and take the company out of my hands." Ethan stood beside her, his gaze fixed on William, as if he could feel the betrayal emanating from him. "And we also know you didn't act alone," Madeline continued. "You involved people both inside and outside the company, trying to ensure no one could help me." William abruptly stood up, panic beginning to show in his movements. "You don't understand. I had no choice." He glanced at the door, as if calculating the possibility of a quick escape, but the police, discreetly called by Madeline, were already in position, blocking any exit. "No choice, William? You chose revenge. You chose to destroy someone's life over something that happened years ago," Ethan said, his voice calm but filled with a firmness that left William without a response. "Don't think you can escape the consequences now." As the officers entered to take him away, William finally broke down. "You think you've solved everything, don't you?" He laughed, but it was a bitter, desperate laugh. "But you're far from knowing the truth." Madeline felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" William, she demanded, her heart racing. William paused at the door, his eyes now filled with a twisted kind of satisfaction. Did you really believe I was the only one who wanted your downfall? Oh, Madeline, you're more naive than I thought. He stepped forward, just close enough to whisper, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Look closer, Madeline. Someone you trust is betraying you. Those words hit Madeline like an unexpected storm. She tried to hide the impact of the revelation, but William's piercing gaze, full of cruel satisfaction, made it clear that he knew the devastating effect those words would have. Who is it, William? She asked, almost breathless, but William only smiled, refusing to answer as he was led away by the police. As he disappeared through the door, Madeline and Ethan were left in silence. The conference room, which had once seemed a place of confrontation and justice, was now steeped in uncertainty. He was lying, wasn't he? Madeline asked, but doubt had already taken hold. Ethan looked at her, unsure of what to say. The possibility that someone close to her was involved in a conspiracy was something Madeline couldn't ignore. Madeline was determined to uncover the truth about who else might be involved in the conspiracy against her. She spent sleepless nights combing through documents, speaking with employees, and reviewing records that had previously gone unnoticed. Every clue she found seemed to confirm her worst fear: someone within the company was working against her. It was during one of these investigations that Madeline made a devastating discovery. The evidence was in a suspicious email she stumbled upon, one that mentioned secret meetings and exchanges of information with William. The sender's signature left her stunned. Emily, her longtime personal assistant. Emily had been a trusted ally, someone Madeline considered almost like family. The discovery was such a shock that Madeline felt the ground give way beneath her feet. Wasting no time, she summoned Emily for an urgent meeting in her office. When Emily entered the room, her expression was a mix of nervousness and guilt. Madeline, I can explain, she began, unable to meet Madeline's gaze. Emily, how could you? Madeline asked, her voice trembling with pain. I always trusted you. How could you be involved with William? Emily tried to hold back tears, her voice breaking as she spoke. I was blackmailed, Madeline. William, he threatened me. He said that if I didn't cooperate, he would reveal secrets about me that could destroy my life. He promised me financial security if I helped bring you down. Madeline felt a wave of sadness mixed with anger. So, you did this for money? Out of fear? It wasn't just that, Emily hurried to explain. I was desperate. My father was sick, and I had no way to pay for his treatments. William found out and used it against me. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but he pressured me in a way that I didn't know how to escape. Emily's voice was choked with emotion as she continued. I'm so sorry, Madeline. I regretted it as soon as I started. But the damage was already done. I tried to protect you as much as I could, but many times, I was unable to stop it. Madeline looked at Emily with a mix of pain and compassion. So, everything we did, all the trust one placed in you, was in vain. Emily shook her head, now crying. It was never my intention to hurt you. I really wanted to help, but I found myself trapped in a situation I couldn't escape. Madeline remained silent, absorbing the gravity of the situation. The feeling of betrayal was overwhelming, but there was also a deep sadness for a friend who had become lost in a sea of despair and manipulation. The reality of what was happening hit her with full force, leaving her in a state of uncertainty about who she could truly trust. With the revelation of the traitors and William's plot finally dismantled, Madeline felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. The company, which had been the target of so much betrayal and manipulation, was beginning to stabilize again, but the road to rebuilding it would be long and challenging. As she prepared to face this new phase, Madeline reflected on everything that had happened. Each step seemed like a battle one, but the real work was just beginning. It was time to repair the damage done, restore trust, and bring back the stability that the company had lost. Ethan, now aware of his past and true roots, decided to stay by Madeline's side. His presence became a source of strength and support for her. He understood the magnitude of what had happened and knew how important it was for Madeline to rebuild not only the empire that had nearly been destroyed, but also her own confidence. With his skills and intuition, Ethan offered to help Madeline guide the company back to the path of success. I want to be here to help, Ethan said, looking at Madeline with firm determination. "Your empire and your life deserve a chance to rise again. I know we can do this together." Madeline smiled, grateful for the unexpected loyalty and sincere support. "Thank you for being by my side, Ethan. Your help will be crucial for starting over." As Madeline's team worked to correct the mistakes and restore the integrity of the company, she began to see life differently. Each challenge and twist taught her that while life could be unpredictable and complex, some connections were simply meant to happen. The time they spent together during the crisis revealed something profound. The people who come into our lives during the most difficult times are not just random, but often exactly who we need to face challenges and find our way back to stability and happiness. Madeline knew that despite the difficulties, the lessons learned and the new connections formed were essential parts of her journey. When the dust began to settle and Madeline felt she had finally resolved the crisis that had struck her, a new revelation shook her deeply. The discovery that Ethan was the son of a former partner in her company had been shocking, but what followed challenged Madeline's entire understanding of her own history. Ethan, the boy who had played a crucial role in her salvation and in resolving the conspiracy, was not just the child of a partner. He was, in fact, her own son, a fact that Madeline had struggled to forget. Many years ago, she had lost a child in a tragic accident. The trauma of that event was so intense that she had blocked out the memory to protect herself from the unbearable pain. The process of investigation and recent events, however, forced these long-buried memories to resurface. The resemblance between Ethan and the man in the old photograph, combined with the details revealed during the crisis, brought the truth to light. As she looked at Ethan, Madeline was flooded with memories of a past she had desperately tried to forget. Every physical feature, every familiar gesture of Ethan, made sense now. The connection between them was undeniable. It was as if the pieces of a puzzle she had thrown away were being put back together, revealing a picture that had been hidden by years of pain and loss. The realization that Ethan was her long-lost son brought not only a wave of mixed emotions but also a profound sense of destiny and connection. She realized that despite all the hardships and separations, fate had a unique way of bringing people together. Ethan and Madeline were not just partners in the fight against the conspiracy but mother and son, separated by circumstances and reunited by a strange twist of fate. Their seemingly fortuitous meeting had turned into a deeply significant reunion, marking the end of a painful journey and the beginning of a new chapter full of promises and new hopes. What did you think of this story? We'd love to hear from you, so leave us a comment below. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more exciting stories we share here. Thanks for watching until the end. See you in the next video.